Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we're diving into unraveling life's enigma, a detective's journey from atheism to inquiry. Now before we get started, I just want to mention that the detective presenting in this video isn't your typical science enthusiast. No, he's a former atheist who's actually a homicide detective, having worked for the Torrance Police Department. Talk about a unique perspective, right? I'm genuinely intrigued to see how his background in solving real-life mysteries translates into unpacking the mysteries of life's origin. So without further ado, let's jump right into it and see what insights this former atheist detective has to offer on one of humanity's greatest questions.
I had a case one time where a cell phone had this text on it. It was the victim's cell phone next to his body at the murder scene. Here was the text. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. Is it just a butt dial, an accident? You know, what does that even mean? It didn't seem like it was really information. I couldn't decode it. What's the message? I don't know. Well, it turned out this message came from his wife, Rachel, who had been cheating on him for a number of years he didn't even know. And on this night, she'd had enough. She wanted to kill him. He was working late. He wanted her boyfriend to go over and kill him at the place of business. But he was getting ready to leave, and he had called her and says, "I'm coming home." So she texted him to hold him in place so that the boyfriend could kill him. This text, like many other I found before, it basically says, "Don't go anywhere, I'll be there in 30 minutes. So this is how they would talk about, I'll be there in 30, be there in 15, almost there, whatever. He waited 30 minutes for her and was killed in 20. So this was actually ended up being a piece of information. Now, one way we discover what this is by asking good detective questions, right? These are the kinds of questions we all are familiar with. Am I right? I want to ask just one tonight when it comes to the origin of life to get us started. I ask all of them in the book, but tonight I just want to cover the where question. Where do naturalists who are not believers think life originated in the universe? Because we've all got to account for the origin of life from inorganic materials. And the proposals have been really broad and widespread. Lots of proposals have been offered. As a matter of fact, some people will say, well, I think it happens in the atmosphere. Some will say, no, I think it happens in the actual waters of some nature, some place on the planet. Or they think it happens in some kind of terrestrial form, like on clay. I mean, I studied every single origin of life theory on this. Some will say, no, it happens at the deep sea vents or under the terrestrial crust. Some will say, no, this don't work. It has to happen in the atmosphere. Or it has to happen rather in space and can be delivered to our planet. Why are there so many theories about where this occurred? You know why? Because no one agrees. As a matter of fact, each of these famous scientists thinks the other guy is desperately wrong. He's certain they're wrong, and it gets worse because it goes the other way too. And the reason why they think they're wrong is because none of these work. Every location that's been examined to explain the origin of life fails miserably. Not just slightly, miserably. Origin of life studies are no closer than they were 35 years ago. We've done nothing in terms of progress except made the problem more difficult, because now we know that there are several chicken and egg problems when it comes to origin of life. Really, all life at the biological level, all life is built out of building blocks, Legos, that are called proteins. Proteins are the building blocks of life. The problem is proteins are generated in little factories called ribosomes. And what do you think these ribosomes are made with? Proteins. That's the problem. You've got a chicken and egg problem. Which came first? And to be honest with you, it gets worse the deeper you look. It's not just in ribosome factories. It's in every aspect of the cell, including the cell membrane. You can't get this complex behavior to occur unless it's protected in some way. But the protection for this complex system is made up of the very things that are in the complex system. That's the problem. You got to have everything in place all at once in order to make this work. And that's why it's so hard to locate a place where all of this could happen without any intelligent intervention. And it gets worse, because it turns out there is one thing that defeats the chicken and egg problem. There's one way to defeat it. You know how it's defeated? It's defeated with something we call DNA. This molecule, the largest molecule known in all of science, right? Built from all the different nucleotides that build up DNA. These 4 nucleotides are used to build DNA. This is the instruction manual that tells proteins how to form. It tells ribosome machines how to manufacture proteins. It constructs and directs all traffic in biological systems. The problem, of course, is what is this? This is a series of nucleotides that are in a certain order, like information, like letters, that are directing traffic. Here's the problem, and Stephen C. Meyer does the best job of saying this. Now, Stephen's a believer, but he's also got his Oxford PhD in the philosophy of science. And what he says in a book that is the biggest takeaway about this first book he wrote, Signature on the Cell, is simply this: there's not a single example in the entire history of science or the universe in which information ever comes from anything other than intelligence. So if this is information in the genome, what is the intelligent source that has put it there? Because you cannot get information any other way. Let me show you what I mean. He actually, there's some work I looked at. I love this guy's work. His name is Dr. Werner Gitt. He's an engineer, IT specialist in Germany. He's written a book in which he talks about the 5 levels of information. Why do we think that DNA is truly information and requires an intelligent source? Well, because if you look at information, it comes in 5 levels. Let me introduce them to you. Here's my dog. Do you guys have dogs? I went over to Pastor Paul's house today, and I got to see his dogs. He's got cute dogs. I have a corgi, a Pembroke corgi. This is the best dog in the planet. If you have a dog, your dog is nothing compared to this dog. Pooey on your dog. This is the smartest dog in the world. But it's a dwarf. It's a Pembroke corgi. And they are like little shrunken down sheepdogs. And they cannot type. If I put a typewriter in front of this dog, it is not going to be able to type. But let's just go with me for a second, do a little thought experiment. Let's say I put a typewriter in front of Bailey, and Bailey, I said, Bailey, do me a favor, type me out a sentence. And after banging her little paws against that typewriter, I write down on the chalkboard what she's typed. She's typed this. Is that information? Yeah, actually it is. What is she saying? I don't know. Is she trying to say anything? I don't know. But is it information? Well, in some sense it is. It's very unusual and specific if you think about it. What are the odds of her typing that same thing again? Probably never happened. What if I had Scrabble pieces that in that format and I threw them on the ground? How many times would I have to throw them on the ground before it would form that combination again? Probably never happened. So it is, in some sense, very specific, detailed information. But it doesn't really tell me anything. I think that natural processes of physics or chemistry could get you this. This looks like random generated sequences. What if I give you one more? What if she typed this? This would be really cool. TT spacebar, TT spacebar, TT spacebar. If she did that, you'd say that's a smart dog, wouldn't you? I think there are actually some physical properties, physical processes of physics and chemistry that could produce simple patterns. That's information, folks. But what is she saying? I don't know. Nothing really. What if she had a bigger pattern she typed? Wow. T13 T spacebar, T13 T spacebar. Now she's really, really smart. But what is she telling me? I don't know. Nothing really. But this is information in the sense that it's specific and detailed. And I think there are actually some laws of physics and chemistry that can give you more detail, like snowflakes, great patterns. So is this information? Yeah. But it's the lowest level of information. This information is called statistics. It is the lowest. Is this what DNA is? No. Let's go up one level. What if Bailey could type this? Wow. Now you're impressed, aren't you? She's mastered word selection. She can actually put the letters together and group them into words. But what is she telling me? I don't know. I'm not quite sure what she's telling me. We're up one level. We've mastered words, but we don't have any content yet. This is called cosyntax. What if she could type this? Now we have words in a proper linkage that gives us a concept we can recognize. She's actually telling us something, and we understand what she's saying. Do you see how much different that is than this? How do we get this through natural processes? You can get this. You might stretch and say you can get this. I don't think you can. You can't get this, though. This is another level of information, which is called semantics. I've been places where people have mastered something between these two. They understand the words, but they're not quite sure how to put them together. Maybe English is their second language. I was in Malibu at a Thai food restaurant, right? I go into the restroom. This sign is hanging in the restroom at a Thai food restaurant in Malibu, California on PCH. Please do not throw paper wiping hand down toilet. I think I understand what he's trying to say. And he's somewhere between cosyntics and semantics. He kind of has the right words, almost in the right order. What if my dog, Bailey, could type this? Wow. This is actually a request. Information that requests a response is different than just information describing something. Information that requests action is another level that is called pragmatics. And if you expect that the person you're talking to is actually going to respond and do this for you, that's even another level called apobetics. These are the highest levels of information. Requests with an expectation of response. If you want to know the difference between this and this, one easy way is to simply ask yourself a question. If I change one character, does it change the meaning of this sentence? Of course not. That's not really information. It's the lowest level of information. So if I look at this and I say, just take one character out, the comma, this has no change at all on this sentence because it didn't mean anything before. It doesn't mean anything now. I think some of you know where I'm headed with this from the look on your face. But at the bottom, at the highest level of information, you know it's high information because if I make one change, like take the comma out of that sentence, now everything changes, right? Now the sweet Bailey who was wanting Grandpa to feed her has now become the evil Bailey who wants to eat Grandpa. See the difference? And that's why we know that this information is at a much higher level. Small changes have dramatic changes in meaning. So the same thing happens in your DNA, right? Here's Billy the Kid, or maybe this is Jesse James, I forget who this is. But if I look at his genetic code, the stuff that actually structures who he is, and I make a small change, take out, let's say, this one nucleotide and replace it, that change results in a change in Billy. Something is going to change. Why? Because this DNA is not just statistics. It's the highest level of information. It's a pragmatic request that's expected to be met. This is hard to explain in a naturalistic universe. And even the naturalists recognize that. So Paul Davies, a physicist from ASU, says, we are still left with the mystery of where biological information comes from. If the normal laws of physics can't inject information, and if we are ruling out miracles, which of course they are, then how can life be predetermined and inevitable rather than a freak accident? How is it possible to generate random complexity and specificity together in a law-like manner? We've always come back to that basic paradox. How do you get this by staying in the room? Well, I describe a couple of ways people try to get it. One thing you can do is simply say, oh, it's just chance. You do it long enough, hard enough, these things will happen by chance. But that really misunderstands the level of information involved. Or you can argue that there's some natural law that could cause information. Give me an example of that. You won't. There are no examples of natural law ever giving you anything more than statistical information, the lowest level of information. So if you want to stay inside the room, you're going to have to go by chance or by law. Those things don't work. Why? Because we're seeing true information in the room. And that means you've got to have a source of true information, and that's got to get you outside the room. That's the problem. See, here's the problem with asking these questions. I ask these questions all the time in homicides, but I don't stop here. I don't ask these questions and stop. If I did that, I'd never solve a case. The next question I have to ask is the money question. It's a who question. All these questions point to the who question. If I refuse to ask a who question, then trust me, you're never going to get an answer. So the folks who are doing origin of life, they don't want to ask any who questions. Can't be a who, has to be a what. That's why you can't solve this, folks, because it's a who you're looking for. And this is what Warren Getz says about that. He says, yeah, you're looking for a who. A necessary requirement for generating meaningful information is the ability to select from alternatives. And that requires intelligent volitional entity, because unguided random processes cannot do this. Not in any amount of time, because this selection process demands continuous guidance by intelligent beings that have a purpose. That's how you get information. If the source of that information happens to be an intelligent, communicative being outside the box, I could explain information inside the box.
Thanks for joining us on this captivating journey through the mysteries of life's origin with our former atheist detective. If you found this video as intriguing as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more mind-expanding content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts, and see you in the next video.